Abandonment in the eyes of the church was rarely questioned. A child left at a convent door was simply God's will, and God's will required no explanation. Sister Agnes had believed that her entire life, until the day a solicitor arrived asking for her by a name she'd never been given. She had been raised within the gray stone walls of St. Bridget's Convent since infancy, one of a small number of foundling children the sisters took in and raised as their own. Taught to read from scripture, to sew, to pray at hours most of the outside world had long forgotten existed. The other foundlings had, over the years, been placed with local families as servants, or had left to marry tradesmen from the nearby village. Catherine, she had not yet taken her vows, and so still went by the name the sisters had given her rather than a religious one, had stayed, uncertain what life outside the convent walls could possibly offer a woman with no family, no dowry, and no history beyond the morning she'd been found wrapped in fine silk on the chapel steps. The silk itself had always puzzled her. The Mother Superior kept it locked in a cabinet in her private study, along with a small collection of other items removed from Catherine at various points during her childhood, a distinction the other foundlings had never received, their few belongings typically distributed to the poor or discarded entirely. Catherine had asked, as a child, why her things had been kept, and had received only a gentle deflection. That the Lord sometimes preserved what seemed insignificant for reasons not yet clear. She was 22, and had begun seriously considering whether to take her final vows, when the solicitor arrived. He introduced himself as Mr. Aldous Fenwick, representing the interests of the Duke of Pemberton's estate, and requested, with a formality that seemed entirely disproportionate to a convent's quiet routine, an audience with the Mother Superior regarding a foundling admitted 22 years earlier. Catherine learned of the meeting only because she happened to be delivering afternoon tea to the Mother Superior's study when Mr. Fenwick arrived, and the older woman's uncharacteristically flustered instruction to wait outside told Catherine, with the particular instinct of someone who had spent a lifetime reading the moods of the only authority figures she'd ever known, that whatever was being discussed concerned her directly. She waited nearly an hour in the corridor, unable to make out more than fragments of the conversation through the heavy wooden door. A name repeated several times that she didn't recognize, the word heir spoken with unmistakable gravity, and finally, the sound of the cabinet being unlocked, the same cabinet that had held her silk and her few infant belongings for 22 years. When the door finally opened, the Mother Superior's face had gone pale in a way Catherine had never witnessed in over 2 decades under her care. "Catherine," the older woman said, "Mr. Fenwick would like to speak with you directly." The study, when Catherine entered it, felt smaller than she remembered, crowded now by the weight of whatever revelation had prompted Mr. Fenwick's visit. He was an older man, precise in his movements, and he studied Catherine with an intensity that made her acutely aware of her plain convent garb, her calloused hands, the entire unremarkable shape of the life she'd built within these walls. "Miss Catherine," he said, "I believe you are the rightful heir to the Duke of Pemberton." The words landed strangely, as though spoken in a language Catherine understood only partially. "I beg your pardon?" Mr. Fenwick gestured to the piece of silk now spread across the Mother Superior's desk. A christening gown, Catherine realized for the first time, fine enough that its quality was unmistakable even to someone who had spent her life surrounded by nothing but practical homespun cloth. Embroidered into its hem, nearly invisible unless one knew to look for it, was a small crest. "This crest belongs to the Pemberton family," Mr. Fenwick explained. 22 years ago, the Duke's younger daughter, Lady Eleanor Pemberton, disappeared from her family's estate under circumstances the family has never fully explained, believed by most of society to have died of a sudden illness while traveling abroad. In truth, Lady Eleanor had secretly married a man her family considered entirely unsuitable, and bore a child before her own death shortly after childbirth. The child was brought to this convent, wrapped in this very christening gown, by a servant loyal to Lady Eleanor, who left before anyone could question her further. Catherine's hands had gone very still in her lap. "You're saying that child was me?" "I am saying the evidence strongly suggests it. The timing of your arrival at this convent, the quality and origin of the christening gown, and most conclusively, a birthmark the servant's original note described in some detail, one I understand you carry yourself on your left shoulder." Catherine felt the blood drain from her face. She did carry such a mark, small and unremarkable, one she'd never had reason to think significant. Why, she managed finally. Does any of this matter now after 22 years? Because the current Duke, your uncle, Lady Eleanor's elder brother, died 3 months ago without a male heir. His estate, his titles, associated properties, and a considerable fortune are, by the specific terms of an old family entail, set to pass to Lady Eleanor's legitimate descendants, should any be found, rather than to more distant male relations who have spent considerable effort these past months attempting to claim the inheritance themselves. The revelation left Catherine in a state she could only describe, in the days that followed, as a kind of quiet, disorienting grief, not for a family she'd never known, but for the entire foundation of certainty she'd built her identity upon. She had spent 22 years believing herself simply abandoned, unwanted, a child God had seen fit to place in the church's care for reasons known only to him. Learning instead that she had been hidden, deliberately and with considerable care, by a mother who had died shortly after giving birth to her, reframed every assumption she'd carried about her own worth. The Mother Superior, in the days following Mr. Fenwick's visit, offered what comfort she could, though even she seemed unsettled by the sudden transformation of a foundling she'd raised into a woman potentially heir to one of England's oldest titles. "You needn't decide anything immediately," the older woman said, as Catherine sat in the small convent garden, the christening gown folded carefully in her lap, still trying to reconcile its existence with the quiet, contained life she'd expected to spend behind these walls. "Whatever the solicitor claims, your life here remains your own to choose." "Does it?" Catherine asked. "I've spent 22 years believing I had no family, no history beyond what these walls could offer me. Now I'm told I'm heir to a dukedom I never knew existed. I don't know how to simply set that aside and continue as though nothing has changed." "Then perhaps," the Mother Superior said gently, "the question isn't whether to set it aside, but how you intend to carry it." Mr. Fenwick returned a week later, accompanied this time by a man Catherine hadn't expected, Lord Julian Pemberton, a distant cousin who had, until 3 months earlier, believed himself next in line for the title, and who had spent considerable resources these past months attempting to establish his own claim before Mr. Fenwick's investigation had uncovered Catherine's existence. Catherine expected resentment from him, and found instead a wary, complicated curiosity that surprised her. "I confess," Julian said, once introductions had been managed and they sat together in the Mother Superior's study. "I spent the better part of 3 months hoping Mr. Fenwick's investigation would prove fruitless. It would have been considerably more convenient for me if Lady Eleanor's child had, in fact, died alongside her mother." "I'm sorry to have inconvenienced you, my lord," Catherine said, with more bluntness than she'd intended, though something in his directness made deflection feel unnecessary. To her surprise, he laughed. A short, genuine sound. "No, I imagine you're not, and I find I can't fault you for it. You've spent 22 years in a convent with no knowledge of any of this, while I've spent 3 months scheming to keep an inheritance I now understand was never rightfully mine to claim." He studied her for a long moment. "I've come, in part, to see for myself whether the evidence Fenwick presented was credible, and in part, I confess, to determine what sort of woman might soon hold considerably more power over my own future than I find entirely comfortable." "And what have you determined?" "That you seem considerably less interested in claiming power over anyone than the situation might reasonably justify," Julian said, "which is either remarkably admirable or remarkably naive. I haven't yet decided which." Over the following weeks, as the formal process of establishing Catherine's claim proceeded, a slow, methodical accumulation of evidence, testimony from the aging servant who had brought her to the convent decades earlier, careful comparison of the birthmark and the christening gown's provenance. Julian visited regularly, ostensibly to keep Catherine informed of the legal proceedings, though their conversations increasingly wandered beyond the technical matters of inheritance. He was, she learned, considerably more thoughtful than his initial scheming might have suggested. A man who had expected to inherit a title through simple proximity of blood, and who found himself, upon meeting the true heir, unexpectedly relieved rather than resentful to discover the responsibility might fall to someone else. "I never particularly wanted the dukedom," he admitted to her one afternoon, as they walked together in the convent garden. Catherine, still uncertain, even weeks into the process, how to conduct herself as anything other than the quiet foundling she'd always been. I wanted the security it represented. I have considerably less appetite for the actual burden of managing an estate and a title's political obligations than my scheming these past months might have suggested. And now I find myself considerably more interested in whether the woman who will bear that burden might want a partner in it, rather than a resentful rival. He glanced at her, something careful and searching in his expression. I don't say this lightly, Catherine. I spent 3 months hoping you didn't exist. I would understand entirely if you found the prospect of trusting me difficult. I find most things difficult to trust, my lord, Catherine said honestly. I've spent 22 years believing myself abandoned by everyone who might have claimed me. I don't know that a few weeks of pleasant conversation undoes that entirely. No, he agreed, but perhaps it's a place to begin. Catherine's formal claim to the Pemberton title was recognized by the Crown some months later, following an investigation Mr. Fenwick himself described as unusually thorough, given the considerable fortune and influence at stake. She left St. Bridget's Convent for the first time in her memory, stepping into a life she had never once imagined herself living, carrying with her the christening gown that had, for 22 years, sat locked away as evidence of an identity she hadn't known to claim. The Mother Superior, in their final conversation before Catherine's departure, offered the closest thing to a blessing the older woman had ever given her. You were never abandoned, Catherine, whatever you believed for 22 years. You were protected by a mother who loved you enough to hide you from danger you couldn't have understood, and by a church that kept faith with that protection until you were ready to learn the truth of it. Catherine thought of those words often in the months that followed, as she settled into the unfamiliar rhythms of the Pemberton estate, as Julian's careful, patient courtship gradually became something she found herself genuinely, cautiously welcoming rather than merely tolerating for the sake of practical alliance. When he finally asked her to marry him, in the same convent garden where they'd first begun to know each other honestly, rather than in any grand estate drawing room, Catherine understood, with a clarity 22 years of uncertainty had never quite allowed her, exactly what she was choosing. I spent my whole life believing I belonged to no one, she told him. I find I'm no longer certain that's true. You belong to yourself first, Julian said. Whatever else you choose to build alongside that, I hope, includes room for me. Catherine's daughter, born the following year, was christened in the very same gown that had once been locked away in a convent cabinet for 22 years. Its history no longer a mystery but a testament to exactly the kind of quiet, determined love that had protected Catherine long before she understood she needed it. If Catherine's story reminded you that being hidden away doesn't mean being unwanted, and that the truth of who we are sometimes takes decades to find us, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next story. Tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered a truth about your own history that changed everything you believed about yourself? Share this video with someone who deserves to know they were never truly forgotten.